Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report. It's Mitchell Renz here from Chat Sports. And coming up on today's show, Chandler Jones. What is the latest going on with the Raiders defensive end? And since it's no bueno, I'm going to give you some Chandler Jones replacements. We've talked about this topic in lengths on this show. I've discussed it on social media. But I do think that there are some new names to throw out there and potential that the silver and black could potentially go out and sign. On top of that, I did get some new information today on Chandler Jones that I wanted to be able to share with all of y'all. So if you don't know what the latest is on Chandler, the Raiders placed him on the NFI list for a personal matter, which means he is out at minimum 4 games. Because he is on the NFI list, the Raiders do not have to pay his base salary while he's on the list. Now, if you remember earlier this offseason, the Raiders restructured Chandler's contract. So his base salary now, I believe, is like $1.6 million. So it's really not a lot of money that the Raiders are saving, which is kind of why I think what they're going to do in the future, if they can't figure out this entire thing, could end up being conduct detrimental to the team. But as it stands right now, what the Raiders are doing is the right thing to do. You put them on the NFI list, you free up an extra roster spot, but you try to help out somebody who desperately needs help, right? Instead of just cutting them to the curb and having them move on. I get emotions get tied into this. My emotions, they go crazy because of all the stuff that this Raiders team has at times. But I do think the Raiders are doing right now by Chandler Jones. But if after 4 weeks or if after a certain amount of time, I don't want Las Vegas to be on the hook for Chandler Jones' contract. And if that means cutting him, unfortunately, business is business, and they have to do that. So he has been away from the team since Labor Day weekend. However, for those of you that have watched this show, I'm going to say like 3-4 weeks ago, we talked about Chandler Jones having an issue, and I had a source reach out to me and said that this Chandler Jones issue has been going on for months. And one of the topics that we discussed before all the craziness around Jones happened was, you know, I'm a big person where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And that's what I always say. There's smoke over here, there's going to end up being fire somewhere. Well, what we ended up seeing during Labor Day weekend was fire, and then you got to go back in time and start figuring out where that smoke was. You got to think about, all right, Chandler Jones missed like 10 or 11 straight practices. Nothing to be heard of from it. Then he's standing up there at the podium. He looks really, really thin. I'm not sitting up here saying what Chandler Jones is going through isn't real. I'm sure he is going through some serious shit. But I've also had a lot of friends, family members also go through drug problems, and weight loss is because of it. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm an old enough of a person where I can connect 2 and 2, and Chandler has those past substance abuse problems, right? So we have a system here, an issue going on for months, and Jones right now, as it stands, does not count against that 53-man roster. So one of my jobs up here is saying, all right, we got an extra roster spot. The Raiders need help on the defensive line. So not only are we going to hit you guys with the latest news and rumors, which is why you should hit that subscribe button. Coming up here in a little bit, I'm going to give you the Chandler Jones replacements. Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler, they need to be able to look themselves in the mirror and say, hey, this Raiders defense, it's not where it needs to be. This Raiders defense is not where it needs to be. And if I want to stay the head coach and the general manager of the Silver and Black, I need to make some changes. So at the very, very end of today's show, I'm going to lay out some Chandler Jones replacements that I hope this organization picks up the phone and maybe gives one of those guys a call. If you don't know what the latest around what McDaniels had to say around Chandler Jones, I got it for you right here. So Chandler Jones obviously has been a roller coaster of a ride, and Josh McDaniels, I feel like, is the king of dodging questions. And I'll tell you this right now, I don't envy the position that McDaniels is in, considering the fact of they are dealing with all this crap because how close they are to Chandler. And when I say how close they are, I mean Ziegler and McDaniels. So McDaniels said again, there's nothing, I can't do anything about it at this point. So we're just respecting that process and understand the situation, and that's really all I can say about it. McDaniels and Ziegler were friends with Chandler Jones and very close with his friends and we'll say his inner circle, if you will, for way before he became a Raider. Like, one of the reasons why the Raiders went out and got Chandler Jones is because their past relationship with him from their time in New England. So you know for a fact that they have a lot riding on the situation of Chandler ending up panning out with the Silver and Black. The Raiders leader, their franchise guy, Maxx Crosby had this to say on Chandler Jones. Chandler's our brother. We love him. For us, we're focused on winning, focused on the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're just focused on the day. That's all we can do. I have reached out to Maxx a few times to discuss the entire situation going on right now with Chandler Jones, and Maxx and I have a good relationship, right? Maxx is the very first Raiders player I've ever communicated with, but I respect the fact that Maxx flat out has told me, like, hey, man, I got to keep this in the building. And I have the utmost respect for that from Maxx Crosby. Let's see what Josh Jacobs had to say on Chandler Jones. Honestly, in the building, it hasn't been a distraction at all. All we do is pray for Chandler in a situation or whatever it might be and just wish him the best. And it is not something that people take personally or come in and be getting mad or feel like it's a distraction. It hasn't been a distraction in the building, just thinking of him and praying for him. And when you have your head coach, when you have your star running back, when you have Maxx Crosby, the face of the organization, say all of those things, it's a good thing for Raider fans to hear, like myself, because we're a passionate fan base, are we not? But it's also good for NFL players outside of the Raiders to hear. It's good for the media to hear. It's good for every single person alive to hear, because everybody's worried about Chandler Jones. But I'm also worried about the well-being of the Las Vegas Raiders. And I'll always say, the shield comes before everything else. And I will stand by that. And if Chandler Jones does turn out to be a distraction to the players and it impacts our ability to win games, my tune is going to change right quick. Now, man, I'll tell you what, we got a brand new sponsor here on the Raiders Report. And this is the perfect sponsor for a Thirsty Thursday, for a Friday happy hour, for a Sunday watch party type of show. Huge, huge shout out to Waterboy. And if you guys want to get started, go to waterboy.com/chatsports and use promo code chatsports for 15% off. Support today's episode comes from Waterboy. Waterboy is a hydration powder scientifically formulated to cut your hangover time in half. There are other hydration packs on the market, but nothing comes anywhere close to fighting those Sunday scaries like Waterboy. With 0 sugar and over 3 times the electrolytes of Liquid IV, your hangover will stand no chance. Unlike their competitors, Waterboy has added ingredients beyond just hydration to help with nausea, anxiety, and fatigue. We all know that hydration alone isn't enough to help after that bender that you just had in Vegas. And for a limited time, our listeners will get 15% off your entire order with code CHATSPORTS at waterboy.com/chatsports. So for those that do not know, Jeremy Chuggs and I, we're going to be heading out to Las Vegas on Friday for Raiders Steelers. I can't wait for Sunday Night Football. And literally, right before we jumped on today's show, I go, Chuggs, you made sure you packed the Water Boys, right? And he looked at me, he's like, oh, believe me, we got them ready. We're ready to rock and roll. We're going to have an absolute hell of a time in Las Vegas. And literally, Water Boy's the perfect supplement, the perfect thing that you guys can use if you're planning on going out to Las Vegas. If you're watching this crazy show with us right now and you're partying, if wherever time that you feel a little bit hungover, take a Water Boy. Venom said he's drunk right now. Get yourself a Waterboy. Waterboy.com/chatsports. 15% off. I promise you, it's going to help you bounce back ASAP Rocky. All right, let's keep on rocking here with the latest on Chandler Jones. So because Jones is on the NFI list, that essentially means that he is going to miss the next 4 weeks. So that's Pittsburgh, Chargers, Green Bay, and then New England. So the earliest that he can return is week 7 up against the Chicago Bears. So my question to you is this, to the 400 people that are watching this live right now. Will Chandler Jones play this season? And I want you to answer this honestly, right? Like, I don't want you to just answer this because you're a Raiders fan. I want you to answer this as an honest question, because this goes way beyond football, right? Like let's be real. And I love the relationship that we've been able to build here on the Raiders Report, where we can have fun. But we can have fun because we're friends, we're family, and with that comes the responsibility of, hey, when I ask you guys a question that's this serious, I need to know, will Chandler Jones play this season for the Las Vegas Raiders? Type yes, or I want you to type no. My answer on this is Chandler Jones will not play this season, and I said that a few weeks ago, but I'm going to go an even further bit here on today's show. I'm going to say that I don't think Chandler Jones ever plays football again. to me, I get that a lot of times these NFL owners, they care about money. But, man, like, there is no way you can put somebody back out on the football field that's dealing with the mental hurdles, the demons that he's dealing with right now. You can't possibly put that man back out on the field. And I hope his agent does the right thing. Instead of his agent trying to put more money in his pocket, I hope his agent contacts the most important people in his life and say, hey, if you don't get this straight, you know, you're going to lose Chandler Jones. Man, like, I got friends, I got family, I got a really close friend. He's no longer a friend of mine anymore, but got into drugs, got into stuff that he shouldn't have, and he's not the same person anymore, right? Like, it's a sad, sad thing. This goes so far beyond football. When Chandler Jones is healthy, when he's mentally straight, he's one of the best football players in the game. And I don't think many people would dispute that. But right now, he's not that guy. And he needs help so far beyond football, which is why I don't think that he's ever going to be able to play it again. So I said this on social media, and for those that don't follow me on Twitter, Instagram, this is one of those reasons why I always tell people, like, we put out a lot of content on YouTube. There's no doubt about it. But we also try to keep you guys up to date on social media. So I had a source reach out to me this morning, a Raiders employee, and they essentially told me this. The Raider Image official team store will not be selling any Chandler Jones merchandise. Raiders employees were asked to remove all Chandler Jones merchandise off the sales floor. Remember, yesterday Chandler was placed on the NFI list, so you have the Raider Image official team store, which I get it. They might not have all the ins and outs, but these are the type of things when you see this, again, the alarm bells have to go off. And my job is to be able to give you this information because not a lot of people are going to be able to cover this type of information. Why? Because they're not invested the way that I am, the way that Jeremy is. And you might not agree with everything that I say, but I think the reason why this show is the #1 most watched Raider show in the entire world is because I have a commitment to excellence to be able to provide you guys with content. And you guys have a commitment to excellence because you're diehard Raider fans. People who are watching this show right now are diehard Raider fans, and I get that. Is this a fun topic to talk about? No, of course it isn't. But it is Raiders content after all, and that's my job to be able to provide that to y'all. So Chandler, I hope, man, whatever you're dealing with, you get back to being the best person that you can possibly be, not only for you, but for the most important people around you. In terms of Raiders stuff, though, I don't think he's coming back this year, and I don't think he's ever going to set foot on a field ever again, which now means it's time to get into some Chandler Jones replacements because the hard job that Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels have, the hard job that I have, the hard job that people have in general is when a situation like this happens, you got to think of it as, all right, how do I take care of the man, Chandler Jones, right? Like, that's the Raiders right now, probably first priority is how do I take care of the man that is Chandler Jones? But then the second aspect of that conversation is, well, we still got to win football games, right? Like, we still have to be able to put a product out there onto the football field that translates to wins, or else we're not going to have a job. So what I'm going to try to do here is this. I'm going to try to figure out who is going to be that player that can step up next to Maxx Crosby, because I don't know if it's going to be Tyree Wilson. I don't know if it's going to be Malcolm Koonce. They're going to get their opportunities this week against the Steelers. But at the end of the day, like, the Raiders need extra help on that defensive line. So my job, the Raiders' job here is say, hey, who can replace Chandler Jones? Because you can say what you want about Chandler not having a good year last year. The Raiders planned on having him being a key focal point of this team. That's a cold, hard fact. So coming up here, I'm going to run through some names in terms of these are some potential Chandler Jones replacements. The #1 name, I've been screaming it from the rooftop, and it is starting to get on my nerves. How have you not figured out a way to bring in Kyle Van Noy? How? It doesn't make any sense to me. This is a Raiders organization that has proved that relationships are very, very valuable, unless Kyle Van Noy doesn't want to be a part of this organization. Maybe that's the case. I just having a hard time believing that players that have played a sport their entire career have decided, you know what, I'm not going to make millions of dollars this year. I can't wrap my mind around that. Another player that I would pick up the phone and call is Melvin Ingram. If you're looking for another defensive end, a veteran that has been around some different NFL teams, I want players that can get after the quarterback. Kyle Van Noy is more the versatile player that can drop back into coverage, where Ingram, you bring him in on third down. You let him cook. The other reason why you have to consider bringing in a Chandler Jones replacement is because you don't want to put too much stress on your rookie, Tyree Wilson. Another great name to keep in mind here is Carlos Dunlap. I think those are my top three. Kyle Van Noy, Carlos Dunlap, Melvin Ingram. The next tier down is Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn had a bad year last season, but just 2 years removed from an 18.5 sack season. But Robert Quinn has the connections with Champ Kelly, the Raiders' assistant general manager right now to Dave Ziegler. So there's Robert Quinn is definitely a name to keep in mind. We have a few more Chandler Jones replacements coming up here in just a second. But I want to know from all of y'all, if you could pick a Jones replacement, who would it be? Is it going to be Kyle Van Noy? Is it a Carlos Dunlap? Is it a Melvin Ingram? Is it somebody who I haven't even mentioned yet? There's a name coming up here in just a little bit that I think makes the most sense for this week. Let's go to another name here. It's Jason Pierre-Paul. And I'm essentially just threw in this name because I know he has a great relationship with Tom Brady. They played together with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Defensive end can be a rotational piece. Another name to throw out there is Tarell Boogie Basham. Definitely a name to keep in mind. Tarell Basham didn't play all too much for the Dallas Cowboys and a little bit more of an undersized guy. But considering the fact of the role that Chandler Jones would have played this season, I do think he would have played a little bit of outside linebacker, which brings me to this name. Quincy Roche. Quincy Roche back in 2021 played with Patrick Graham, so he has those ties with Graham, and when he was with Patrick Graham, played pretty damn well. Had 2.5 sacks, rotational guy. But the reason why I like Quincy Roche, because right now he's on the Pittsburgh Steelers practice squad. If I can get that competitive advantage from a guy from the practice squad when I have an open roster spot, I think it's kind of foolish that the Raiders haven't really tried to get Quincy Roche, who they worked out last week. Another player that they worked out last week was Malik Reed. And if you're seeing Roche, Reed, undersized defensive ends, maybe a little bit bigger outside linebackers, and that's the role that I do believe that they were trying to incorporate with Chandler Jones. So if we get any more updates here around the Raiders defensive end, I'll keep you updated. If the Raiders end up signing one of the guys that we talk about, hey, we'll go live. If the Raiders do anything humanly possible, my job, Chug's job, is to make sure that you guys are always satisfied with this channel. And if anybody's going to be out in Las Vegas this weekend, come party with us. We're going to be out in Vegas. We're going to be having a good time. Make sure you guys are looking out for us. We're going to be with the Blackout Group at Tropicana on Saturday night. It's free to get into. The drinks are going to be flowing. The food's going to be great. The music's going to be popping. I promise you this. If you love what we do here on YouTube, believe it or not, Chugs and I are also a lot of fun in person as well. So RSVP for free at all the events that you see down below there at blackoutdivision.com. I'm going to say it again just in case Refined Zeus was pouring up one. blackoutdivision.com. Come party with Jeremy, Chugs, and I this weekend out in Las Vegas.